Are you playing a Warlock and you're not sure exactly which spell you should pick? Well, you're in luck, because behind today's secret door, top Pact Magic Warlock Spell. So behind today's secret door, top Pact Magic Warlock Spells. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons and Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. All right, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo, Doug, and Jamie for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. All right, so I thought this might be a useful video. Picking spells can always be a problem, and the Warlock doesn't get to pick a whole lot, so whatever you pick, you really want to make it count. But that being said, I think that this is probably going to be a far more useful video for people who have never played a Warlock before, maybe beginning players or just players that don't normally play spellcasters, that kind of a thing. If you're a lifelong Warlock player, a lot of these are going to be rather obvious to you, I would think. Okay, so let me set down some of the criteria for how I'm doing this. I'm only taking into consideration things in the PHB, the 2024 PHB. So I'm going to be listing the top 3 spells for each level, levels 1 through 5 for Pact Magic. In addition to that, I will also list what is the best patron spell at that level. Meaning if the Celestial has the best spell at level 1, let's just say it doesn't, but let's just say that it does, then that will be listed. This is just as a point of kind of completion, I guess. I think if you're going to pick a patron, the spell list is certainly a consideration, but you're probably picking it for other reasons than the spell list alone. If the spell in question that I really like is on the patron spell list, is already on the general Warlock spell list, that's still useful, but I'm ticking it down just a peg. Having something that is already on the list is still perfectly reasonably good and valid, but getting access to something outside the spell list altogether, well, that's obviously going to be more valuable in general. But that only applies to 2 spells that I consider to be generally equal. This only happened, I think, once in this list. But in terms of the general Warlock spell list, we're going from levels 1 through 5, and these are the spells that I would say are... I'm prioritizing combat spells because the Warlock has to prioritize combat spells. But nevertheless, if there's a fantastic utility spell, like a really wonderfully great utility spell, that will certainly end. If there's nothing else on the list in combat that's equal to that, then I will certainly list a utility spell. And finally, I generally want to be looking at spells that could apply to any kind of build of a Warlock. But that being said, if the spell is sufficiently great that it's only going to apply to somebody that is going to go with one particular kind of build, but that build is a very popular build, I'm going to list it as highly as I think that it warrants. So I'll start with what I consider is the third best, and then the second, then the first, and then I will give you the patron spell. The patron spell is just for last, just for fun. It's not necessarily a better spell. So here at first level, my third overall pick at this level is Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is going to be the control pick that is available to any given Warlock. If that's what you want to be doing, you're not going to do any better than Tasha's. It's a great spell. And coming in at number 2, we have Hex. Hex has a kind of a strange controversy around it. I'm not going to address that controversy. I don't subscribe to that controversy. I understand the argument. I just don't think that it's a good argument. I think Hex is a very, very valuable spell, and now it's been upgraded so that if you cast it with a second level spell slot, you're gaining a duration of up to 4 hours. And then when you consider that you can also be basically casting it for free, it's pretty hard to convince me that if I can get this thing for free, that I shouldn't be very excited about a spell like that. So Hex is just one of these spells that not only does it have the duration, and therefore it gives you a certain level of economy to work with, it's also going to work very nicely for Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Blade is becoming a dominant playstyle for Warlocks in this new rule set. So its overall appeal is there, and it's going to be particularly good for certain kinds of builds. But just about any Warlock is going to want to consider taking Hex. And at the number 1 pick at first level is Armor of Agathis. For the spells that are exclusively Warlock spells, Armor of Agathis would have to be argued to be the greatest of those spells. Now, at first level, it's not necessarily all that fantastic, to be quite honest with you. It's how it upcasts that makes Armor of Agathis truly, truly great. It was great before. It's even better now. But that being said, this is one of these rare exceptions where it's only really going to be particularly useful to a character that is Pact of the Blade, or a character that's, let's say, using True Strike an awful lot. And both of those things are becoming more and more and more common. So if you are a character, in other words, that's going to be relying on Eldritch Blast all the time, or some other kind of ranged attack cantrip, Armor of Agathis isn't really going to be something you're going to want to grab. But for everybody else, it's a must grab. Great spell. Fantastic spell. And for the patron spell, the Archfey is the winner here, because at first level, it grants you Sleep. Sleep got both downgraded in this edition and wildly upgraded at the same time. So it's a mixed bag, but it is better than Tasha's now, in that it only allows 2 saving throws. And it's also got an area of effect. It's a very small area of effect. It's 4 squares, but it's an area of effect nonetheless. But it is no longer the instant wipe the encounter at first and second and sometimes third level. But it is now something that you would compare it to Tasha's, but just a tick better than Tasha's. Tasha's does have the advantage, though, that it upcasts in such a way that it can duplicate that kind of area of effect ability, but it could hit other different targets across the board. So from an upcast standpoint, Tasha's is a bit better, but from a saving throw standpoint, I prefer Sleep. All right, here we are at level 2. Level 2 is one of these famous levels because there are some nice, very, very nice picks, and it can be very difficult to discriminate what is truly the best when we're talking about of these best ones. So I think these 3 are clearly the best, but which one is actually better than the other one is really kind of circumstantial to your table. I'm just relating it based on my own experiences. And that brings me to number 3 for second level for a Warlock would be Mirror Image. Mirror Image is a great spell. It's a wonderful spell. However, it's one of those things that as a Warlock, can you really spare a spell slot to cast it? That's the real trick. In fact, I rather doubt it, but the spell is so great that I have to list it. And at number 2, and number 2 here could easily be number 1, I will explain. Number 2, I have Misty Step. Misty Step is obviously a great spell. The one problem it can have with a Warlock is that a Warlock that's using Hex and or using Pact of the Chain, and if they are using Pact of the Chain and they have Investment of the Chainmaster, this is a very bonus action heavy character. And even if you are going Pact of the Blade, there's a very good chance your bonus actions are being used up in that same respect. But Misty Step is obviously a great get out of jail free card. It can even be used in exploration to good effect. So it's a great spell. Could easily be number 1. And at number 1, I have Invisibility. Invisibility is possibly the king of the utility spells at this level. And it also scales nicely because you're adding extra targets to it for every level that you upcast it with. So it's obviously a fantastic spell. I think that while Misty Step will get you out of a jam, and that's great, and it can also be used tactically as well, I think that it gets a little touch overvalued in general. I'm not saying it isn't super. It is. But I think it just gets a little touch overvalued. Invisibility is one of those things that can solve all kinds of problems in D&D. And it's something that you're almost always going to be able to find a use for. But like I said, number one, Invisibility, Misty Step, you could, if you want to order them at 1 and 2, and Misty Step at number 1, be my guest. And finally, for the patron, the best patron spell at this level would be, and this is also one that can be choked for choice here. The Fiend gives you suggestion at level 2, but at level 2 here I have Aid. Aid is not only a great pickup spell, it has a 8-hour duration without concentration. That makes it fantastic. It also scales greatly with your Pact Magic. So, and the fact that you could pick up, in the situation, if you had up to 3 characters that were all down, you could pick up all 3 with one spell. When you add all that stuff up together, it's just a fantastic spell. But obviously there are some nice choices that the other patrons give you, but Aid is potentially a game changer. So here we are at level 3, and my third pick at level 3 is Summon Undead. Now, it's here because A, it's a summon spell, and you don't really get too many of those, but it also has synergy with 2 of the better familiars, and if you are going to, for Pact of the Chain, and if you are going to go with Pact of the Chain, and why wouldn't you, in 2024, both the Quasit and the Pseudo-Dragon can interact very nicely because I believe is it the Putrid Spirit, that if it hits something that has the poison condition, it paralyzes them. This is a very famous combination, but because Pact of the Chain is so prevalent amongst warlocks now, that becomes a bit more important. Now, I'm going to qualify this one. I don't think it's necessarily a must take, but it is definitely a must look at. The paralyzed condition is obviously crazy, and it's a nice combo. I'm not a big combo guy. I want the spell to kind of stand on its own if possible. So I think it's worth you must look at it, I think, as a warlock, especially if you are going with Pact of the Chain, though. And at number 2, I have Counterspell. Counterspell is just one of those spells that, as a warlock, I think you have to consider taking it. It's virtually a must take. You don't have the spell slots to be throwing those around willy-nilly, but if you absolutely have to have it, then you have to have it. And in those scenarios where you have to have it and you don't, you're going to feel really dumb. And at number 1 on the list, and this should be no big surprise, is Hypnotic Pattern. Hypnotic Pattern is possibly the premier control spell of the game. Well, not the premier, but certainly at this level it is. A fantastic, truly, truly powerful spell. It's a must take. If you're going to play for control at all, you have to take Hypnotic Pattern, in my opinion. And that brings us to the patron spell. And the patron spell here at 3rd level comes from the Fiend, and that's right, it's Fireball. Good old Fireball. Now, this gives you something that you don't really get on the Warlock spell list, and that's AoE damage. And at this level, it's the king of AoE damage. And it will still be a very strong spell for many levels to come. It's not going to be a powerhouse in, like, past level 10, but it's going to cripple encounters here at level 5 when you get it. And probably level 6, level 7, it's still going to be, having a very swingy effect, and level it begins to start petering out level 8 and 9. And then by level 10, it's still a lot of damage, but Fireball is just clearly great. Okay, level 4. Now, level 4, I feel really dumb listing 3 when the spell list is like that long. For level 4, there's just not a lot of spells on it. But number 3, Banishment is a good spell. I am force-feeding it on this list, however. If the lists weren't this small, it's a good spell. It's just not it's not a must-take spell. But it is number 3 on this list. Number 2 is Summon Aberration. Summon Aberration, I have pretty much the same kind of feeling as I do for Banishment. There's really only one spell at this level, and that's the first level spell, the number 1 pick. But it is a summon spell. Summon spells can always be useful. There's some reasonably useful choices in that of the 3 spirits that you can pick from. So, I mean, it's fine. It's a good spell, not a great spell, not a must take. What is a must-take is at number 1, and that, of course, is Dimension Door. This is one of the other kings of utility spells. Do you need to get out of a jam? Dimension Door. Do you need to get anywhere in exploration? Dimension Door. It's a fantastic, fantastic spell. If you've never played with Dimension Door before, it's amazing. And for the patron spell, this one is also kind of force-fed, to be honest with you. The picks are not all that great, but this one is a great pick for very specific builds. This one from 4th level comes from the Fiend, and it's Fire Shield. Fire Shield is not a spell that I would cast if I were not Pact of the Blade. But if you are Pact of the Blade, it doesn't require concentration, and it can sit right there on top of Armor of Agathis. So whenever you end up getting hit, you're dealing back just an insane amount of just reflexive, action-free damage. And that's the big thing about Armor of Agathis and something like Fire Shield. Action-free damage. Really big deal. I think Fire Shield is, generally speaking, kind of it's good. So why do I have it here as the best 4th level spell from all the patrons? Because they're not that great. Remember, I am talking about only the 4 patrons here. The 4th level spells across the patron list is not particularly powerful. Now, there's Wall of Fire. A couple of them get Wall of Fire. You could argue Wall of Fire is better, but I would say that the impact that Fire Shield can have for a Pact of the Blade character is way higher than what Wall of Fire will do. Even though you could be casting Wall of Fire in a lot of encounters, it doesn't have the impact that you want a wall spell to have. So it's a weird pick, admittedly, but that's my pick for the best 4th level patron spell from the Player's Handbook. All right, and here we are at the end of the Pact Magic at level 5. I'm going to kind of cheat at number 3, and I'm going to give you 2 that I consider it's just really a judgment call. Dream is an interesting spell. I kind of like it. And Teleportation Circle. Now, Teleportation Circle is not a spell that is really worth very much if you can't make use of it, but if you can, it's a great spell. Dream is also one of these spells that has just an amazing level of creative uses, shall we say. And then we get to number 2 on my list. Now, here is where I'm putting my own kind of preferences aside and trying to follow the rules I set out. This is not a combat spell, but it is, I think, the number 1 pick at this level. It is a utility spell. It is one of the great utility spells in the game. And for those of you who are familiar with this channel and my Warlock videos can already know what I'm going to say. Scrying. It's one of those spells that can make you wonder how you played D&D without it. It's just a great, great spell. But it is a utility spell, albeit it is a masterpiece of a utility spell. But there is a combat spell here at number 1 that is a great combat spell. And that spell at number 1 is Synaptic Static. Now, it is not, you're at level 9 by the time you get this. And I don't think that this is a must-take for everybody. But it's a must-take for a lot of Warlocks. Now, if I were the Fiend, I wouldn't take it. Or if I were playing a 3D Genie, I wouldn't take Synaptic Static because I already have Fireball. And, I mean, Synaptic Static is giving you that debuff, and that debuff is fantastic. And it's psychic damage. But with that same spell slot, I'm doing 10d6 with Fireball, and I would just generally prefer the damage with a spell like this. But Synaptic Static is doing 8d6, and that debuff is great. So like I said, not a must-take for everybody, but almost everybody. And for the top patron spell at this level, it's the great old ones for Telekinesis. There are some great choices here at level 5. Admittedly, Telekinesis is just one of those. It's just very tough to beat. It's the flexibility for me. It's also that it lasts for 10 minutes means that if you're in a dungeon situation, you can have it running and go into that next room quickly and still have it running. That's always nice. Whenever I get a really good spell that lasts 10 minutes, I always favor that. It's a great control spell. Just like I said, very, very flexible, useful spell. It's one of those spells that at 5th level, if I'm playing a wizard, the only reason I don't take it is because I've got some unbelievably powerful options that I would rather take. But if it's on my spell list, I'm always glad to have telekinesis, always. So for the patron spell list, let's just kind of go over those from levels 1 through 5. Number 1 was the Archfey for sleep. Number 2 was Celestial for aid. Level 3 was the Fiend with Fireball, and again the Fiend at level 4 with Fire Shield, but that one is admittedly kind of a weaker choice. And at level 5, the Great Old Ones coming in with Telekinesis. So everybody came out pretty well. All right, well that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.